So welcome to the Trade Entrepreneur podcast. Today we're on the road in Douglas in the Isle of Man, and it's great to be joined by Lee Mayers. Now Lee is the Managing Director of Villlage Fireplaces and Stoves here in Douglas in the Isle of Man's capital city. We've got a lovely fireside chat waiting to be had here. So Lee, what is your background? How did you get into the industry?
So initially I started off as a builder. We had a building company for 17 years. And then alongside that I had a reclamation yard, and we used to fit quite a lot of traditional fireplaces, and then obviously as stoves started to be introduced, we fitted a stove which we had to get building control in to come and check and sign it off, and during this process actually building control complimented us on what a good job we did and suggested, why don't I do this full time? So this little seed planted in my head, and it started to grow basically. And so I started looking into it, looking at what brands and things like that, and obviously the whole heat-ass side of it. So initially I thought, right, I'll get myself through heat-ass. So I signed myself up and went and did my heat-ass courses and came back, and then got the brands that initially I wanted, and
like Stovax, who are very big on the island.
Stovax, yeah, very big on the island. Due to other shops which are no longer on the island, they kind of started off this Stovax Gazco craze. So we've sort of carried on from that. It's mostly now parts and labour, things like that. But we still do sell quite a few of the old Stovaxes, and it's been great. We've started off with Yotel Stovax, and as time's gone on, we've grown and grown, and from what it was then to what it is today is completely different. But I think that's just been a case of, as you start to do these things, you start to learn, you start to understand what customers want, but also you start to find other products, and it's been great. We've loved every minute of it. Not just us as a business, but our team's grown as well. We started off with 3 of us. We're now up to 9, and there's a possibility that will grow even more. So it's been really, really good.
Well, before you got into the industry, a little birdie tells me that you had a 5-minute acting career with David Bowie. Tell us about that.
I did. So I actually got hired by a company to be security on set, and I had to stand outside David Bowie's room that he got ready in, and there was a scene that needed to be shot that night because they were in a rush to get things done, and they said, could you quickly play a part on the movie? We'll pay you. And I was like, yeah, absolutely, that's fine. So I was suited and booted and put outside a club doors and made to look really hard and protect.
And what was David Bowie like?
Really nice guy, really genuine, really down to earth. He wasn't a princess like a lot of them could be, but yeah, he was just a great guy. He was lovely to talk to. So yeah, that was my 5 minutes of fame.
So you've got a team of 9 now. That's quite a large number compared to what other solid fuel installation or sweeping companies have. As a business owner, what's the biggest challenge in managing a team of that size?
That's a good question. It's a hard one because you have lots of personalities to deal with, and obviously they're all doing different jobs within the business. So lots of personalities, and I've got some big personalities. So it's been a rocky road, let's say, because obviously coming into this, it was all new to me, and I've never sort of managed a team like that before. So it was a learning curve, let's say, for the first 2 or 3 years. It was quite difficult. But obviously, as I've got a little bit older and as the business has grown, I've sort of learned. I've read a lot of books, how to manage teams, personalities, and so on. So it's not been easy, and you know, it's hit me hard mentally, physically, but I've learned from that, and I've grown as a person, and actually I think if you were even to ask a few members of my staff, they would say, yeah, I'm a great boss, but maybe I wasn't back at the beginning.
Do you think age plays a part in being a better boss?
100%, I do. I think obviously as you get older, you become calmer because you can understand things better, and I think you understand processes and business products. You understand these things better, so therefore I do feel that you grow as a person, and you can handle situations better. And I think, you know, all the bad things that happen to you over the years, you know, situations which you think are bad at the time, but actually they're not that bad, you know, it's just something that's gone wrong, but you deal with it and you learn from it, and learning from it is the key. And I think,
So what did you learn from books on how to manage people that you didn't get through day-to-day life?
I wouldn't say that I learnt so much in the respect of, it was more the points. I think I already knew it, but I think they highlight things for you. So they kind of bring things to the surface that maybe you've forgotten about. So then that can give you sort of the ideas of having that input and dealing with it. So in that respect, you know, I wouldn't say you because you've already learnt it, but maybe it was not highlighted and you've not dealt with it in the way that you probably should have done.
Or you couldn't apply it to a situation, but when you look at the book and you go, yeah, that happened to me.
Yeah, absolutely. So it does highlight things, and you know, you kind of think, oh yeah, that was that situation, and oh yeah, well that's how I dealt with it then. Maybe this is how I should have dealt with it now. You know, so it really is good in that respect, because when you do read a book, or I like to listen to audio books because I feel I take that in better rather than reading it. So yeah, it's not been an easy process, but I think we are just about there now, and every day's a learning day. Even now, you know, I still learn things. I've got a great team around me. They all have their little quirks, and I still sort of have to manage little situations, but you know what, I think they get me now as well, so they understand my thought process, how I want things to be run. But the only reason why I do that is to make sure that, number one, we provide a good service, number two, we provide a good product, but also we do it in a professional manner. You know, it's all about, at the end of the day, what the customer wants. And I might have missed something when I do a survey, or they might have missed something. So it's just working together as a collective team and making sure that what we provide is 100% what the customer wants.
What's the biggest lesson that you've learned from owning a business?
Wow. I would say to date, it's don't be afraid of losing a member of staff, because it could be that member of staff that's the toxicity within the business that's basically changing the mood of everyone within the showroom or out on site. So, you know, there are other people out there who may be better suited, but I think, you know, when you're busy and you're booked up, you just you dread the thought, oh well, how am I going to get around this? You know, if I lose that member of staff, it means I'm going to have to go and do this. But the reality is, you will get over it. You just face it at the time. And 9 times out of 10, when a problem does arise, you dread it. But actually, the reality is, when you go out and you're fitting yourself, yeah, it's back to the good old days for a few weeks maybe. But, you know, you get over it, you get around it, and you work something out. It's like anything, I suppose, you know. When situations arise, you just deal with it at the time.
So are you like 99.9% off the tools now?
I am pretty much, yeah. I mean, although having said that, Tuesday I did have to do a little bit of an install because we are so busy. But But I actually enjoy it. You know, every now and again I get out to do a little bit of an install.
A change is as good as a rest.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And the good thing is you can still show, you know, your staff that you've still got it. You're still capable of doing it.
And prove it to yourself as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because, you know, a little bit of time out does, you know, your thought processes change. And maybe, you know, your member of staff might do it in a different way to the way you've done it. But actually, you know, I had a good time. I proved to a member of staff that I've still got it. I proved to myself that I've still got it. And actually, what probably should have taken a day or two, we did in, you know, half a day. So it worked out really well.
Are you one of those people who enjoys learning? Because I think sometimes when you come off the tools, people think, well, I've stopped learning now. It's now time for me to pour my knowledge into my staff. But you've got to keep your own mind active.
Absolutely. And I have to say, what I've done over the last year, I listened to a lot of books. I put myself out there, so I do quite a lot of trips to the UK. I'll go to other showrooms for inspiration, but even just to talk to the owners, because, you know, everyone has their own sort of idea of how things should be run, or, you know, products and so on and so on. And I just think that talking to these people, you learn more.
Absolutely.
From them than what you would do learning from a brochure or this or that, you know, because they've got first-hand experience. They're selling the product already, and they may have been doing it longer than I have, you know. So it's invaluable, that experience from other people.
And I find that as business owners, as entrepreneurs, you can't help but just have ideas. And when you go into someone else's space, like this great showroom you got here in Douglas, it's like my mind's racing, like that's a good idea, that's a good idea. I'm nicking that idea and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And you need that, because, you know, running a business is a lonely endeavour.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've got a trip planned in a few weeks, and the side of it that I miss home. Obviously sleeping in different hotels every night and eating food, and, you know, you're not used to sort of your home comforts. But actually, you know, you need to make those sacrifices. There's so many people in this industry, and every person you speak to will be different, you know, and everyone will have one little piece of advice for you. And if you can accumulate all those little pieces of advice, it just makes you mentally stronger. And it gives you more of an idea of, you know, if somebody does come in and ask a question, you've got the answers. But also as well, when you do find people give you these pieces of information, it then gives you a little spur on to then go and find out about that product, or find out about how it should be done.
Is putting yourself out there hard for you?
Yeah, a little bit. I'm not great when it comes to talking. I do get a little bit nervous, and I do sort of find it quite hard. But, you know, I'm getting better with it. I mean, I am getting better. Even sort of doing this, you know, I was a little bit nervous before, but actually, you know, I feel like I'm talking to you rather than talking to the camera, so it has eased me up a little bit. But actually, you know, going away and doing these, I mean, you know, the staff will say to me, oh, what are you doing that for? You don't need to do that. But the reality is, I do need to do it, because it's about keeping up with the loop, keeping up with the times, keeping up with new information, new products. And if I can bring as much of this business as possible, because there's going to be a day where, you know, I retire, my daughter may take over, and I need to pass this information on, because one day she'll probably know more than I do. So it's invaluable for me to gather all this information together. I can have that input then with the staff, even training with the products itself, bringing new products in, having that training, not just for me but for my staff as well. It just makes all the difference.
Do you feel that for you there was so much of a knowledge gap between being on the tools and getting off the tools, that almost the staff have to suffer the pain of learning with you?
Yes, 100%. I mean, initially, obviously, I was a builder, had a building company, and, you know, there's obviously a lot of attributes from building that comes forward to this, you know, with installations. But the actual technical side of it, the heat test side of it, the building regs, but also the product, you know, and how they burn and how that product works and which is the best product for a short flue or which is the best product for this, or, you know, and you get to find all these little things out. And, you know, that is invaluable. It really is invaluable.
I think some people really underestimate the depth of knowledge that you need for our trade, because at the end of the day, we are so many things. We are heating advisors, we are ventilation advisors, we are construction and architectural advisors.
We're everything.
And I always say to newbies who come on our HETOS training courses, this job requires so much. It requires so much brain power, and it needs so much mental agility that compared to other jobs, and it's not to be disparaging of other jobs, it's so much more.
Yeah. I mean, you look at an installation, you're thinking about the hearth, the chamber, the construction work behind that, the flue system, the stove, the lintels, the register plates, the finish. You know, you're taking something, an ugly duckling, and you're turning it into a beautiful swan. But it's all those little pieces in between that you have to think about before it turns into that beautiful swan. So, you know, I've got certain guys that are good with certain attributes. You know, I've got really good plasterer, I've got a really good joiner, I've got a really good this. So, you know, for us, it's working out, right, who's the correct person for that job? Who's the correct person? And what's the right stove for that person? And then obviously you've got the technical side of it, right? What's going to be the best product for there? So you have to think about all these things. And then you obviously got to pass that information on to your fitting teams. So, and it's, you know, in some cases you may have to write it for different fitting teams. A prime example, you know, we have one of our fitters who's a brilliant fitter, but he struggles on the writing side of things, or you know, things like that. So you have to think about all that, but it's not just that. You've got to think about your office side of it. So where are you getting that product from? Where's the best place to get that product? Because there are loads of products on the market, but you may get the same product from 3 different manufacturers, but actually one of them manufacturers not so good, but then you've got another manufacturer, you can get the same product but really well built, really well made, and you know that's the product you need to go for.
What are the challenges of running and marketing a company on a small island?
So the Isle of Man, because it is a small island, actually social media is brilliant for us. So we use Facebook, Instagram, and we are going to go into TikTok. So that's our main way that we do all our marketing. We do the odd brochure. There are a few screens around the island that do it. So trying to get on that is actually an 18-month waiting list. So it's absolutely crazy, but also very expensive. So we're finding, actually, you know, we've recently had a new website built. We're doing a lot of videos on our website so that people can go there. But generally, you know, we are changing the way that we do our marketing at the moment, because obviously as the population, the younger generation are moving forward, that's the way they want to see things. They want to see videos, they want to see this, they want to see that. They don't want to just see a boring little post with, you know, a bit of writing on. 9 times out of 10, most people just scroll past them. But if you can make something a bit more, like a video, for instance, people want to watch those little videos, you know.
That's why we're doing this.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, yeah. So that's I think is the future for marketing. And, you know, hopefully, fingers crossed, we will, you know, get there, and we'll start doing a few more TikTok videos, and we're going to do some fun ones as well. It's not just about all serious. We have some funny guys working for us, have really good personalities, so I'm sure they'll come up with some imaginative ideas.
Yeah, I struggle with where the line is drawn between silliness and unprofessionalism, because it's something that's come across as light-hearted some people can look unprofessional, and there's no worse critics than in your own industry.
Yeah.
So they'll go, why are you doing that? And that looks bad on us. And it's like, well, it's just a bit of fun.
Bit of fun, yeah. Absolutely. And you know what, you can be serious. I mean, anyone could be serious, but not everyone could be fun. Mm-hmm. So I would say, a bit of fun, a bit of humour, a bit of lightheartedness. It doesn't hurt anyone. And just run with it. I think people will make their own judgments, and you'll get some people that will call you out on it. But do you know what? I guarantee you now, you'll get more people who like it rather than dislike it.
Absolutely. In terms of the industry, if you could wave a magic wand and there's one thing that would happen to the solid fuel industry, what would it be? So,
I think as an industry, we need to probably be more collective as an industry, as in, the manufacturers need to team up together, I would say. I think we've got the SIA, and more people are getting on board with the SIA, which is great. But I do think we need to do more. I recently visited the UK, and I was horrified at the amount of posters on the backs of buses.
Yes.
How bad stoves are. They can cause so much damage, the particulate matter and this, that and the other. And
it's fake news.
Wow. Here in the Isle of Man, we don't have any of that. But we do get people coming saying, oh, log burners being banned. I'm like, I'm a little bit startled, because
even in the Isle of Man?
Even in the Isle of Man, we had to do a 2-page spread within the newspaper just to let people know that log burners aren't being banned. And looking through the local building control and planning posters, legislation they put out, we literally went through, I think it was 32 pages, and on the last page, on the very last line, log burners are not being banned. Log burners and multi-fuel burners not being banned. And that was it. That was the only thing. But then what we found were that people were getting new builds built, and they were being refused planning permission for a log burner or an open fire. And I just couldn't get my head around it. And what we've since found is that actually they're actually more on board with it now, because they're realising heat source pumps aren't as efficient as they should be, and people aren't getting the heat. So they're realising that people are needing a secondary heat source to heat their homes, and actually they are encouraging it. So planning seems to be no more an issue.
It seems amazing that somewhere like the Isle of Man, which is a large part of it is off grid, that you have what could be deemed a London-centric view about stuff, because here solid fuel and oil, I'm pretty certain, is more popular than gas.
Oh, 100%. We brought gas into the showroom. We tried so hard for 2 years to try and turn that around, but gas prices on the island are so high. People are actually turning to log burners and getting rid of their gas boilers. But we are an island with a lot of Victorian properties, Georgian. So a lot of these houses still have open fireplaces in, but they are under the impression that they can no longer use them, or that they're not going to be allowed. So to try and educate people, we're trying so hard to say, no, that isn't the case, that isn't the case. You can still have an open fire, you can still burn coal, you can still burn wood, but people are so disillusioned by the UK media stream, and it's not the case. The Isle of Man is so different to the UK, and although we run along UK legislation, people just don't seem to read the facts. But the problem is we're not being helped by planning or building control, because they're not running enough literature on it. We have obviously spent thousands and thousands of pounds in magazines, newspapers, on the radio, to try and let people know that that isn't the case. But still we're finding that very, very hard.
You see, my main bugbear is the solid fuel industry. I don't think it helps itself, because you've got one side pitting against other sides.
Yeah.
So you've got installers saying we shouldn't have open fires. It's like, well, you've got a Georgian property with an original open fire. Someone's not going to rip it out and, as nice as it is, put something like that in, because they want the original feature. And I think if you've got someone in industry saying that, then we're almost fighting with one hand tied behind our back.
We are. And do you know what? You know, I'm probably a little bit guilty of that myself, to be honest with you, over the years. But I think I've learned over the last few years that actually, why are open fires so bad? You know, they're not bad.
They're not.
Most people love an open fire, and yeah, you probably get more efficiency out of a log burner. But actually, you know, if you're burning coal, everyone knows, you know, you put a bucket of coal on before you go to bed, it'll still be lit in the morning. You empty the ash, you get it going again, and it's probably a lot more user friendly to use than a log burner.
I actually found a study which was conducted a few years ago and published last year that said in terms of sulfur dioxide and PM 2.5, smokeless fuel is best burnt on an open fire.
Yeah.
And that was like, wow. That was like, why don't more people know this?
Yeah.
So, you know, people go around saying open fires are bad, open fire, we shouldn't have them. It's like you don't understand how open fires work. And I think it's a dying art. People just think, rip it out, put a stove in, job done. But if customers want open fires, they're actually a massive benefit to older properties.
Yeah.
They allow air to be drawn around the property, which reduces damp. They look nice, they add probably quite a bit of value to a property if you've got a working open fire. And I just think the industry needs to work together rather than pitting itself against each other, because divided sides do not win arguments.
No, we need to be more accumulated with each other. We all need to band together to solve a bigger problem. Businesses trying to do that individually, I think would struggle to try and change people's mind. So I think the only way that we can do this, we have to do it as an industry. And, you know, hopefully people will get on board with that eventually, and we can make these changes, because at the end of the day, it's going to benefit everyone.
I think, just coming back to the individual business, I think as an individual business, you can affect change by just speaking about it. Because so many businesses and business owners don't want to stick their head above the parapet, because what happens then is you get shot at.
Yeah.
And you know as well as I do, the hassle that you get compared to staying silent, short term is probably better. Long term, it probably doesn't help. So you've got to take that short term pain for long term gain.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I've kind of when something has arisen like that, and you know, I've had my thoughts, and I thought, oh, do I put my thoughts out there? Do I say my piece? And I have commented on a few posts over the last year or so. And, you know, you get your negativity. You always get your people like, oh, I don't agree with you and all this carry on. But at the end of the day, I have an opinion, and I'm entitled to my opinion. And likewise, so yourselves, and so is everyone else. We are set rules. We have to abide by them. And it's those people that make those rules. We obviously have to adapt to those rules within the fireplace industry, whether that be the manufacturers, the fitters, you know, all the other smaller businesses in between. And we kind of have to just run with it. You know, we have so many changes made. There is a few that have come out recently which I don't agree with, and I'm sure a lot of the rest of the industry don't agree with. And there's all sorts flying around saying, oh, they must have their fingers in this, or they must have the, you know, why we don't have one governing body to make it easier instead of lots of different governing bodies and lots of different inputs. I don't know. You know, that's not for me to say, but I do feel like we're playing off too many fields.
I mean, in terms of standards, for instance, gas has one governing body.
Yeah.
But the amount of bad gas jobs I see.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So I always kind of like go, not, you know, it's a bit like, oh, you know, X should be nationalised or whatever, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
Well, it's like it doesn't always work out better.
No, not always, but at least everyone's on the same page. I mean, I can be honest with you, there are obviously a couple of governing bodies when it comes to multi-fuel, and I'll have one guy tell me one thing, but then on the other shoe, they're telling me another thing, and I'm thinking, hang on a minute, who's right here? So you end up doing the looking for the information yourself and coming to your own conclusion.
Coming to a third conclusion.
And you just think to yourself, well, why am I part of that organisation if I'm not getting the information given to me correctly? And then you go to the organisation, they're going to give you a completely different point of view. So then you delve into finding that information and you come up with your own conclusion and you think, well, am I right? So you end up not being any more the wiser.
I think the hardest thing really, and I think it's very prevalent in solid fuel, is that a lot of things are open to interpretation.
Yes.
So when we run our training courses, I specifically talk about this and give a scenario, and you'll find that there's 4 people in a room and they'll have 5 different opinions.
Yeah.
Because a lot of it is down to personal preferences, interpretation and opinion. Whether it should or shouldn't be is kind of like, well, that's by the by. It just is.
Yeah.
So, and that's what certainly frustrates newbies coming into the industry. They go, where is the definitive answer? Well, there ain't one.
Yeah.
There actually ain't one. You've got to bring a load of things together, like manufacturing instructions, approved document J guidance. Then there's customer preferences, there's the construction of the building, there's town and country planning and all those things. So you kind of, like I said earlier, it's one of those jobs where you have to bring so many parts into the process that you have to have a lot of brain power and a lot of mental agility to be able to do the job.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right in that respect, and there is so much that you do have to think about, and things are changing quite rapidly as well. So you're having to learn this new information while still retaining the old information. And I hope we are going in the right direction. And as a a company owner, I do feel over the last couple of years things have got a little bit harder, and there is a little bit more to think about, which is not a bad thing. Any learning that you can do it can only be a good thing. But when you do then have to try and pass that information on to the fitting staff, they're so used to doing something in a certain way, it's really hard to get them out of that habit and then move them forward with the new processes. So obviously down to training.
But you're big on training, because what you do is you send your team on training courses, and there'll be some companies that go, well, I'll have the badge, you guys do the work, and I'll fill in the paperwork.
I mean, for me, it's imperative that all my staff are qualified. At the end of the day, 9 times out of 10, customers coming in, they say, "Oh, are you such and such?" And we're like, "Yeah, we're part of that governing body," and they're like, "Oh, brilliant," because that's what I've been told that I need. So obviously that's driven by the government and obviously the company themselves. So which is only a good thing, because it stops the cowboys. People are aware now that they need compliance, that they need these certification to be able to sort of sell their properties, when it comes to sort of servicing and things like that as well. We've had a couple in this week, where we had an installation, it was done 17 years ago, but we haven't got a certificate. And I'm like, well, the only way we could do it is rip it out, start again. That may be that you need a new stove or a new this and that. Oh yeah, but we've got till Friday, and it's like, well, I'm sorry, unfortunately there's not a lot we can do. So there's a lot of that goes on the island, and I'm sure there are people out there that are sort of doing things the way it shouldn't be done, but for a quick buck. But I would see us as the biggest sort of showroom on the island, and our standards they're aimed high, and I want them to stay high. we don't sort of steer off for anything. We make sure that what we do is 100% of the time.
I think that's the only way to go. I think, you know, I was told a very good saying that cutting corners does not make for a well-rounded job.
No.
And I think that's regardless of the industry you're in, that you need to be able to do your bit. And yeah, you will make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes.
Yep.
And it's not the mistake that's the problem, it's the way you deal with it that's the problem.
Yeah.
We've made mistakes in our company. We had one last week where we made an error, and I just said to the customer, give us the bill and we'll sort it. And the customer was like, okay. And they were surprised.
Yeah.
And I said, well, that's just the way we deal with things.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
the other day, if it's a genuine error, hold your hands up, take control of it, move on.
Absolutely, because if you know, had you not said that, you'd be in your mind, it'd be driving you crazy, and you're just like, oh, how am I going to deal with this? You know, but 9 times out of 10 it's because people are trying to save money. You know, but sometimes you just have to take a hit.
Yeah.
You know, we've had a few things happen to us over the years. There was, for argument's sake, there was a TV that got broke. Yeah, we might have lifted it. We can confirm that we didn't do it, but the customer is, you know, convinced that we've done it. So, you know, it's what your insurance is for. You know, so sometimes, yeah, you might just have to hold your hands up and say, okay, no problem, we'll sort that for you. You know, it's done and dusted, it's out your head, move on to the next project.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. You're quite right. It's about not letting it take up that space in your brain.
Yeah.
Because that's valuable space.
Absolutely, and you need that valuable space within your brain, because every day you've got new things coming in, new things happening, and you need that to be able to concentrate on those things. If you're worrying about that and you're worrying about that, you're not concentrating on what you should be concentrating on. I hold my hand up. I've got ADHD, and you know, I struggle with certain things like that. But I've got lots of things going on in my head all the time, and I have to deal with it there and then. I get that problem solved, and then move on to the next one. So I'm a bit of a stickler for that. So I do have to kind of deal with it at the time, or write it down and go back to it at a later date.
I'm convinced most business owners have ADHD. I think probably, you've got to have.
I think you do. Yeah, absolutely. You know, for me, I've set the tempo, and you know, I expect to stay there. I don't want to be there, or you know, I really strive to make sure that everything's 100% of the time. I know that's impossible. You'll never please everyone. You will get customers that you can't please. You'll get customers that you exceed. I think you have to run and take the rough with the smooth.
Absolutely.
You have to. You know, there's no way you can have 100% of the time. You might have 2 really good weeks, but then you might have 1 really bad week. Do that week, get over it, then move on to the next 2 really good weeks, and so on and so on.
I always find it. I think I saw this on a podcast somewhere, that someone says a disaster will be a disaster at a time, but a year later there'll be some humour that you can get from it.
But also that disaster has helped you make sure that doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
So it's actually a learning process.
Yeah.
It's not just a disaster. And I actually, with certain little things, I've actually got a little book, such and such happened, here's how to avoid it. So I come up with a solution for it before it ever gets to that stage again, and I'll say to the lads, right, such and such happened on this job. Let's not make that happen again. It may be that there's a problem with the product, which maybe, you know, you didn't think of, so we don't want to do that again. So let's not use that product for that. Let's try a different product, or let's point the customer in a different direction with the stove, or whatever.
Sounds like you've got some good processes going forwardly. What does the future look like for Villlage?
So this year's been actually in 3 months we've made a lot of changes. We've brought in some brilliant new products. So we've just finished one of our new stands for one of our products, We've got 2 other really good products coming through. So over the next 3 or 4 months, we're going to be doing that. We've got a new flue system going in so we can get more live fires. I think it's imperative we do that so that people can see the way that these fires work. Unfortunately, at the moment, the building, we've only got this fire live. But
it's nice. It's
it's lovely. It's lovely. It's been adapted over the years. We've had about 4 or 5 different fires within this opening. Unfortunately, in one of the cheeks there's a stone which is about 1/2 metre by 1/2 metre.
Oh, nice.
So there was no way that bad boy was coming out. So yeah, we've adapted it over the years, and we've ended up with this at the moment. But we actually had a little discussion before, David. This is ideal to put an open fire in.
It is.
So that's probably going to be the next port of call. Put a nice traditional open fire in there, so that people can see that open fires are still available and still can be fitted.
Excellent. That is a fantastic note to end on. Lee, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much, David.
Really good. And it's always great to speak to fellow business owners who've got those ideas bubbling around their head.
Yeah.
And especially if you like open fires. I'm definitely very warm to that idea.
Yeah. Very
That's
good.
Great. And thanks very much for joining us. If you've got a comment, drop it in the comments below. Follow us on our socials on Facebook or on TikTok. It's been a great chat. Look forward to seeing you again soon. So please do keep in touch. But like I say, many thanks to Lee for hosting us here today. Have a great week, and we'll see you all again very soon.